Oh, probably grabbed the mic, huh? Way down here in the corner with the rest of a messy room. It is what it is. So, it's working on some things here. Part of it is working on the fitness routine now. Up my game. I'm doing 10-minute pedals. 10 minutes of pedaling every hour on the hour. Well, not on the hour. Every hour on the half hour. So I've improved my ability to do some biking, but that's not what we're here for this week, are we? We're here for writing. And one of the things that you brought up yesterday was the question of how to publish these things for people to gain access. And so I did a little research on that, and there's a couple methods. One of them was published by an author whose stuff I've read a little bit of and I'm curious to read more of. And their method for that was Creative Commons under the BY NC. I forget the third one because I don't think I want to do it as non-derivative work. So theirs was Creative Commons with attribution and non-commercial use, and they also had non-derivative works. I feel like the goal of this channel for me is to make it possible for people to produce derivative works. So I don't think I'm going to include that one. I looked up some information on the guy who wrote The Martian, and he serialized his, publishing a chapter at a time on his website. And so it really does seem like setting up some kind of simple website, being careful to keep track of where I can set up a website where they won't get ownership of the content I create. I'll look and see who else I know. A couple authors I know who have done serialized works on the web, and I'm pretty sure they have to be able to maintain their rights for that. So I'm going to look into seeing about doing that, and if it's possible to do just like a simple blog post serialization, I may do that. I don't know if I can do that through Tumblr. I have to do some research on that. And I was looking at Discord, because Discord offers the option of sort of having a forum for your channel. And that offers the opportunity of communicating and sharing video, image, and audio files. But I don't know who the owner of the rights to any of that ends up being with Discord. And I don't know if you can do long form text. So I'll have to look into that. But I think it's a possibility. Recipes I think will probably end up going up maybe in like the Discord channel if I build a Discord channel. Some of my artworks maybe. Some of the music would probably be SoundCloud, I think is the best way. Although I think I can embed audio clips on Tumblr, and I may just release some of that because I don't imagine I'm going to release any big music files that I'll ever want to publish some other way. Video game downloads. That one's harder to release for free, I think. Well, harder to release for free in a format outside of some of the game app stores. There are game app stores where you can download free games, and so I should be able to do that. Board games, probably not as easily. Videos, just post them to YouTube. It's the books, the board games, and I think that's in the video games. The products, I think I probably could release the plans or some of that stuff on Tumblr. Because, I mean, that's a basic sketch of what I'm making. It's not something anybody's going to be able to commercially reproduce, theoretically. Anyway, so that's sort of one of the things I've been working on today, is figuring out how I'm going to release my fiction. And it looks like serialized may be the way to go, but it's different because most of what I will probably be releasing there will be short stories. So it's not really serialized. I'll have to think about how to frame that, because serialized usually means like on this week's episode of the story of such and such. And mine are more likely to be a character piece that's a standalone story, and then another story set around that setting. Yeah, we can still treat it as a serialization. And then I've been playing around with my science fiction universes and consolidating them. And I've pretty much got my hard sci-fi worked out for a timeline. And I've got my soft sci-fi still kind of divided into 3 to 4 groupings, but it's 3 to 4 rather than 5 or 6. So it's getting there. And I feel like the stories that I'm likely to write for that this week are going to end up being the things that stitch those stories together, because they're timelines of events. And it's sort of like if you had 4 Earths, it would work out fine. But this isn't a story about alternative realities. This is a story about the timeline from base Earth on which certain events happen and affect the progress of humanity in the greater universe, and the end series where they start to consolidate together again. And so I have to find a way to split apart my biological, technological universes here. I don't want to call them universes because that's not what they are. Let's see if I can pull that file up. I'm using a different computer tonight. It's my old computer, which is still mostly broken, but cobbled together in a way that works. And so what we've got here is the abducted humanity, the invaded humanity, the technological, like the robots rebellion humanity, and then the biological tinkering humanity. Those are the 4 sort of settings that I have that I need to connect to form a mythology of how those worlds come into being. So like the technologically advanced, the AI, that the robot rebellion stories start with RoboCop, then go to Ghost in the Shell style stories, Stranger in a Strange Land, which is transplanting the human brain into another human body, Total Recall, transplanting memories into a body. Then something like Battle Angel Alita, Neuromancer, iRobot, Bicentennial Man, Rossum's Universal Robots, which, believe it or not, is one of the first science fiction stories I ever read. I read that back in elementary school. And then like Blade Runner, Battlestar Galactica, Terminator, and then Matrix. So it's all to do with cyborgs, robots, and AI. And then the biological tinkering one starts with a little bit of like Jurassic Park and the Island of Dr. Moreau kind of stuff, and ends up with, weirdly enough, ends up passing through Star Wars into X-Men into Dune, the way I've arranged it. The Alien Invasion one is sort of based off of the series V. Not V for Vendetta, but V, where aliens came to Earth and they were passing as humans, got into positions of power, and are sort of controlling humanity, potentially eating humanity, which leads us to the next one, which is Soylent Green. And from there, we have other things. And we get all the way out to Enemy Mine and Star Trek. Now, if you've never seen the movie Enemy Mine, it's based off of a short story. But the short story might even be a novella. Has a very different ending, and I like the movie version better. And it fits with the idea of reptilian aliens who we're at war with, and then sort of like coming to reconcile the relationship between the two species. And from there, you can go into like a Star Trek setting. And so these are very different feels, like going from a modern day Earth that's been secretly invaded by aliens who look like us on the outside, but are acting in nefarious ways. Going from that all the way out to an enemy mine situation. Those stories follow a very certain path that's derailed if it's happening on the same setting as a more cyberpunk RoboCop to iRobot type setting. And so I feel like what I need to do potentially for that is look into the possibility that, say, the Alien Invasion one becomes a aliens come to Earth, poses us, and as that conspiracy unfolds, when we start to fight them off, could they withdraw us? Or the trick to that is, like, the V story concept is one of secretly turning us into livestock. They turn us into pigs and cattle. And taking that story, it's possible that, like, you think about early agriculture in the world that we live in right now, we had a tendency to take our domesticated animals to other lands. And so, like, wild hogs are not necessarily native to the United States. And the horses that we have here are not native to them, to the United States. We had horses in the United States. They went pretty much extinct. And then we brought horses over from Europe. And so we have a tendency to bring animals with us to other places where we live. So I feel like maybe taking that route with the alien invasion story, lets me pair up the alien invasion and the genetic tinkering, where we start with Jurassic Park and Island of Dr. Moreau. And there's a good split point. I think like I can tie them together at one end, have them split off with the aliens taking us to their other world. And then it sort of gets a forking path. It gives them a common start, and they can come back together as they assemble at the end of the universe, which I want to build a recollection through things like Star Trek and Star Wars universes, where you have a lot of aliens and humans are kind of dispersed throughout the galaxy. That's sort of where that's probably going to come into play. Now, the robot and there's another one, I forget what to really call it. I've sort of framed it as abducted. But I don't think that's the right term for it. I have to think about how to frame that one. But with the genetic tinkering and the alien invasion story, if I can figure out how to connect that into a similar, like the origins of humanity are the same in the universe where we're dealing with the AI, robots and AI. I'm not sure how to do that yet, because some of that setting would drastically change the other settings and make the sequence of events impossible for those settings. And then the fourth setting that I have to deal with there's the potential of treating it like if you look at the Stargate universe, you have the possibility of ancient humanity being pulled away from Earth through a portal to another world, and they grow up thinking their world is still Earth. And that's sort of potentially an option here. It's a tricky option with the concept of a subsequent second invasion. So I got to think about that. No, no. Yeah, so those last two are going to be the tricky ones to reconcile, I think. But when I really figure it out, like the connector, the one that connects the genetic tampering with the alien invasion universe, like that's got to be a story of the invaders redistributing people to another world that they own. And at some point in the genetic tinkering universe, we're going to have to overthrow them so that they're not there through the rest of the series of events there. And so that's like two stories in that universe, the shared universe of those two timelines that I can play with. And however I figure out to connect, like if I go back to the Stargate model of humanity was pulled through a alien gate by a mysterious civilization that we know nothing about and deposited on another world, which our ancestors thought was still Earth. then with that model, I can use that to sort of tell the story of that passage to another world. And then that just leaves figuring out where the Robot Uprising set comes into play and figuring out the one that connects it to the settings. So those are sort of like 4 stories right there for the soft sci-fi universe. The hard sci-fi universe, it's mostly reconciled. It doesn't need those linking stories that the soft sci-fi does. It's also not as huge and all-encompassing. But it too is also arranged as a timeline. And as I think about including and pairing it with my Geist series, the trilogy that I wrote for that, it tends to mean that all of those stories, or most of them at least, will be told as collections of short stories for each of the phases of that timeline. And so each one of those 17 points is probably going to have 9 to 12 short stories each. And a lot less long form fiction. Maybe a novella in each set. I don't know. And then that just leaves the fiction writing for Rita Raygun fiction. The thrilling interplanetary adventures of Captain Rita Raygun. And they're very pulpy, Raygun Gothic stories. So I'm actually thinking that I'm just going to, like, I need to refresh my memory of Raygun Gothic, and they call it Sword and Planet and Planetary Romance. I think that's one of the phrases for it. It's the heroic character on an alien planet where the heroics are not done through computers, robots, and science necessarily. It's still a little bit more of that classic pulp hero. In this case, it's sort of turned a little bit for the female lead. Instead of being Biff Hardslab, the heroic interplanetary ranger, conquering savage natives on Venus and Mars and rescuing some damsel in distress. The story's got to be different for a Captain Rita Raygun. Although maybe she rescues some attractive but dumb boy who has her eye. I don't know. I think I was as I try to remember how I was originally contemplating that character for the games I built for her. I think I was trying to write the character as having stuck to adventure and excitement on an interplanetary level rather than the standard model of the expected settle down, become a wife and a mother kind of situation for her. She's made the choice of what's more important for her. And I don't know if I wanted to include some of that as sort of like a character defining trait, or if it's just something that you get the sense of over time. I don't know if I want to really have her sitting in a bar and, talking with a friend about how like that life's not for her kind of thing. I don't know. I got to really get a sense for what the character is, who the character is. But I also want the character not to be conquering the bloodthirsty savages around the different, like that's a very, very inappropriate trope for our modern mindset. And I feel it's sort of a little bit more fun for the character to find a sidekick who's a Watson to her Holmes and do that in a pulpy adventure way. I may have to look, believe it or not, one of the best examples of this kind of mindset, maybe the original Star Trek series. You just take away the 70s god-awful oranges, browns, and avocado greens and all that garbage, and the very blocky retro 70s, 60s, and 70s future look, and you replace it with a little bit more of the streamlined modern Art Deco googie mix that you can get for a ray gun gothic feel. I feel like if you took a Star Trek the original series story and just did a little bit of tinkering, you kind of have a ray gun gothic story. And so I may have to look into doing just a look through some of the other, like they did a Star Trek the original series animated series. They did some comics. They've done the movies, and then they had the TV series. And there may be some fan fiction out there too that would be worth taking a look at. Or like nerd theories, where people talk about things that happen off screen. Like, what's the story of this relationship between these characters? And just sort of dig into that and get a sense, a feeling of the history and the adventure of the original Star Trek. I think that's the flavor I maybe want to cultivate, with a little bit of Buck Rogers and a touch of Flash Gordon thrown in. I'm trying to think. There's a couple of other like pulp, sort of like the Shadow and the Phantom, like the pulp superheroes that existed before the superhero medium really took off. And there's like Hardy Boys. Those types of stories, I think, are what are going to lend the flavor to Captain Rita Raygun. And so that's sort of what I'm working on right now. I'm hoping to get a fair amount of writing time over the next few days. So I should be able to bang out a few stories. But we are approaching, well, we're about 29 minutes in. I'm about ready to call it, because I want to hop back on and start doing some more work on these and have a little bit of enjoyment with creation there. That's all right. I am fully aware of live streaming is at this point my mode for uploading videos. I like it so much better than edited video, but once I've live streamed them, they're up for good, so you can watch them at your leisure. And that's sort of like I try to give the countdown for when I start it, so you could pull it up next to it and watch at the same time. I think probably that first episode of Black Mirror, it's the first one I've seen. I've not seen any of them. That was the first one I've ever seen. And I'll see how the rest of them do for me, but I wasn't like blown away. And at the same time, it was probably one of the best live stream reaction videos I've ever done, because it was so like the reveal of the tense moments in that. I was like, it just gets such a reaction from me. First of all, because that one was absurd, and the way people handled it was just unrealistic, but kind of fun to watch. And the whole thing turned into just a mess of a story, but it had some good points of making commentary. And so, like, if I were to rate it, I'd give it maybe a C, maybe a C minus as the story goes. I'm hoping that there are some B pluses in the mix. I was doing some looking up, and it looks like there are only like 3, 6, then 12. So I think we have like 18 to 20. I'm not sure. It doesn't look like there's an over a lot. Like they say like season 1, but season 1's like 2 episodes. And season 2 is I think like 3 or 4. And I was like, oh, so these aren't like a TV series where they're like 13 episodes for the minimum of the first season. No, these are just like when they feel like releasing a new one, they do. I don't personally get it, but okay, it doesn't. It just means that it's not going to be as much workload to dig through and catch up on. I feel like there's another series like that I'm forgetting that I was also supposed to look into. I wanted to look into The Boys, Umbrella Academy, Black Mirror. Like, is there another sci-fi anthology series that came out that I'm forgetting? I'll have to figure it out. I'll have to see what I can figure out. But actually, tonight, after this, I'm done for videos today. Tomorrow's video will be the creative prompts inspired by the book I read for Monday. And then after that is watch a movie and creative prompts for that movie. And Friday is going to be the day in between where I do some update stuff and maybe some posting of some of my writing. I'm not sure. I feel like it would be more interesting to backtrack on some of the other things we've done this year so far and post some of those and talk about where I've posted them so that people can find them. So I got to work on figuring that out for Friday, how I'm going to handle that. And then next week is a board game and product. Actually, it might not be a product this time. I may be doing a service. I'm looking at some software or services that I want to experiment with online. There's one that's a grocery ordering service I'm kind of curious to try. Yeah. I'll get to the exercises in about 10 minutes. Don't worry about it. So yeah, I'm getting to the point where I don't want to do any more tonight. All right, so yeah, Umbrella Academy and The Boys are both some of the more fringe, shocking, hardcore comic book settings that have come out, and I kind of dig that they're doing that new approach to the superhero genres. So I'm kind of curious to see those, and I feel like I'm way behind. Yeah, that one's supposed to be pretty graphic. The Boys is pretty graphic. Oh, there's another series I want to watch that's what is it? Love Death and Robots or something like that. Like that came out a while back, and I'm like, I have to see this. Because it's sort of like that more gritty, hardcore, like anthology science fiction series. And I'm like, I need to check some of this out because this sounds like some of the stuff I used to love when I was younger. And so I do want to see it. There's another one, though. I feel like there's another one that I'm forgetting. I'll figure it out eventually. But in the meantime, I'm debating whether or not I'm going to do Viewsday nights if I'm going to do individual episodes in a series. So like I did the first Black Mirror. If this coming Tuesday, a week from today, is another Viewsday, am I watching episode 2? Or am I just switching over to another series and never coming back to Black Mirror? I don't know. I feel like if I do one episode a week for Viewsday, I could be at it for a very long time. And I did want to watch some of the Marvel TV series too. I wanted to get back to some of those. I did like the first episode of each of them, I think. Alrighty. I don't think I'm gonna stack batches. I don't think I'm gonna do like 3 or 4 episodes in a Viewsday night. I think that's too much. I liked the TV show hour to half hour episode kind of range. That's a decent Viewsday. And I'll stick the movies, keep the movies in reserve maybe, but I will mostly do those as reviews and prompts. I might start offering prompts for Viewsday nights too. I don't know. Anyway, 37 minutes in. Thanks for joining me, and I will catch you later. Tomorrow is daytime will be prompts based off of Secrets of Selkie Bay, which I really did enjoy that book. I know it's a kid's book, but I really enjoyed it. And then I'm debating Thursday may be The Incredibles 2. I'll think about it. All right. Thanks for joining me and take care. Have a good night. Okay, yep, I should probably make sure I do that in the right place. My back is killing me. All right, so there you go, and